You're welcome. Can any good come out from this Tinubu administration? Can any good thing come out from it? There's this propaganda going on right now that, oh, it's just less than 1 month and Tinubu has done so fantastically. Is this really true? What is it about the policies he has enacted so far that is making life easy for Nigerians as we speak? Because these are questions we need to answer. There seems to be a silence of the graveyard across the length and breadth of Nigeria right now. And somehow the APC administration is mistaking it for the citizens of Nigeria singing Kumbaya. They are mistaking it for, according to the statements they made, that Tinubu is winning over the hearts and minds of Nigerians because they perceive that there is a silence across the country. But is this silence indicative of the fact that Tinubu is winning over the hearts and minds of Nigerians? Does it mean that Nigerians are singing Kumbaya? These are questions that you and I need to be having. And these questions need to continue, not only online, it needs to continue off social media. And that's why we are putting together the League of Patriots to take this message off social media and take it offline. Take it to the streets where it's actually needed. Because there is a misconception of the seeming silence that we are experiencing right now across Nigeria. This silence that the APC is interpreting to mean that Nigeria is singing Kumbaya, that Tinubu is winning the hearts and minds of Nigerians. This silence needs to be addressed, because if it is not, it is a ticking time bomb. It needs to be addressed. Like I said in another video, the silence is as a result of two factors. One of it being that majority of the people that are bearing the brunt of the policies of Tinubu so far, and we will look at the policies in depth, all of the major policies, we'll look at them in depth and see how they really affect Nigerians. From the electricity bill, student loan, fuel subsidy removal, increase in pump price of fuel, devaluation of the naira, privatization, and all of them. We'll look at all of them. Then you see that the people bearing the brunt of all of these policies so far are the average Nigerians out there. They are you and I. You are the ones bearing the brunt. They are not bearing the brunt. Meanwhile, they are the ones coming into the public space to announce that Nigerians are singing Kumbaya. Nigerians, Tinubu is winning over the hearts and minds of Nigerians. So you tell me again, so that they can hear. And whatever opportunities you get, please say it. It doesn't cost you anything to just leave a comment online. Everywhere, not just only on this platform. Because tyranny and wickedness only succeeds not because they are strong. Tyranny and wickedness succeed not because they are indefeatable. They exist in societies because good people, average people like you and I, keep quiet. And we keep quiet because of fear, over magnified fear. The people that should be afraid are the people that are making us afraid. So whatever opportunities you get, you should try as much as you can to leave a comment to state the true state of affairs in the country, in addition to what we're doing here. So like I said, can any good come from Tinubu's administration? What do you think? Can any good come from Tinubu's administration? You know, to answer this question, I'll borrow from a popular adage that our elders like to quote. He said, the evening that will be good, the morning will show it. In other words, the morning shows the day. Saturday that will be good. From Monday, we'll start seeing the signs. From the few things that Tinubu has done so far, can any good thing come from his administration? My quick answer, I don't know yours. You can let me know yours in the comment section. My quick answer to that is no. And I'll explain using all of his policies so far. Can any good come from Tinubu's administration? Considering the fuel subsidy removal, considering the student loan, considering the electricity bill, and the 40% tariff increase on electricity tariff, considering the devaluation of the naira, considering how they have managed to tame the NLC as it would appear, considering the fact that you now have them seemingly buying over the media and the media is now singing their praise, considering the events that happened in Tinubu's last visit to Paris. When we look at all of these, like we will do now, you will now be able to see that truly, I will try to convince you that no good can come from Tinubu's administration. If Nigerians out there who are in the majority understand the power of their numbers, and if they know what is good for them, the best option for us right now is to pray and support in any way we can that the right thing be done at the tribunal, that the rightful mandate be reclaimed and given to the rightful person, which is Peter Obi. And there's a simple reason for this. Peter Obi is a production leader. Tinubu is a consumption leader. Why do I say so? Mark's difference. Perhaps I should start from this to explain why no good can come from Tinubu's administration. At the foundation of it is their personality. Tinubu is a consumption leader. And like you know, consumption is the problem of Nigeria right now. Consumption is the foundation for corruption. You see, in the movie The Woman King, something profound was said. And that profound statement was made by the king, Gezo. I think that's close to the last scene of that movie. He said this: the Europeans and the Americans have seen that in order to keep a people in chains, you must first convince them that they have to be bound. So in doing that, the people themselves become a part of their own oppressors. You can call it there's a name for it now, where people begin to fall in love with their oppressors. The something syndrome. I've forgotten it now. I'll remember. You can call it that. So the first thing the Europeans and the Americans did was they looked for a way, two things actually. One is they looked for a way to convince us that we are meant to be bound. Then the second thing is to divide us and conquer us. And how did they do that division? Let's start from that division, because that would explain how Tinubu's personality as a consumption leader has set the foundation for no good to come out of his administration. We'll explain. So, divide and conquer. That is what the British, one small island in Europe, that is what they used to do what? To conquer the world. It worked wonders for them. Wonders everywhere across the world. In Africa, in Asia, in the Americas. it worked wonders. And so they brought it to Africa. They brought it to Nigeria. And they divided us to conquer us. How did they divide us? They used greed to divide us into two groups. The greedy, who are willing to sell their brothers and sisters into slavery to get the allures, the goodies, quote and unquote, that the British were bringing, and the majority of the other people who are the people that are bearing the brunt. Can any good thing come out of it? And we're looking at how it is that the Europeans and the Americans, the colonialists, made up of the British and co, when colonialism was a thing, when they came, they used two things to defeat us. They, on the one hand, chose how to program us, to convince us, to hypnotize us that we needed to be in chains. And then the other part is they now chose a way to divide and conquer us. And after they did that, what now happened is you had a group of persons who were now becoming rich by selling their brothers and sisters. Now, that's what they did then. That's what they are doing right now. They have not changed. They say a leopard cannot change its spot. The colonialists, the imperialists, sorry about that. The imperialists cannot change their spot. They cannot. As they were in the days of slavery, so they are now. So they were in the days of colonialism or colonization. So they are now in these days of neo-colonization, or what I call slavery 3.0. Can any good thing come out of Tinubu's administration? You can let me know what your thoughts are. Let's brainstorm. Let me know what you think. If you think anything can come out of Tinubu's administration, feel free to let me know. But as for me, I am convinced beyond reasonable doubt that no good can come from Tinubu's administration. And that is why I have set out to to explain and expose certain things that are hidden in all of Tinubu's policies so far. They have come to validate the colonialist structures that were used to defeat and enslave us 2 times before in the past. Those structures are what Tinubu's policies are revalidating right now, emphasizing, buttressing, making stronger. Number one of it is removal of fuel subsidy. Now, while fuel subsidy in itself is not a bad thing, everybody subsidizes. In fact, we had a doctor, now a professor, at the International Institute of Social Studies in Hague, Netherlands, speaking to the world and saying specifically that the biggest subsidizers, the countries that subsidize the most, they are the Europeans and the Americans, the Canadians. They are the ones that subsidize the most. They subsidize everything. They subsidize their steel companies. They subsidize them. They subsidize their education. They subsidize their health. They subsidize their military. They subsidize. They pay subsidies. And then they lie. The reason they do all of these is so that their corporations can be viable, can succeed. Then they now turn and use the IMF and the World Bank, working in conjunction with those their private multinational corporations, to go into other countries, buy over those countries, and then by asking them to devaluate their currency, asking them to privatize, and asking them to remove subsidy, so that the cost of living can go up, jobs will dwindle, they will benefit, and then we will suffer. That's their game plan. That's their structure. If you cannot wait for the whole stream today, just take this little part. That's the whole structure of the Americans and the Europeans. They tell you, and it's a lie. They come and they lie to us that, oh, privatization is the way to go. Government has no business in business. It's a lie. Government has business in their businesses, in the Americas and in the Europe, in the United Kingdom. This is the trick. They say, oh, we leave it to private companies. Meanwhile, they go behind the scenes and they subsidize those private companies for one purpose: world governance, to dominate other countries. Because country to country, you cannot invade another country without going through the channel of war. And the whole world will see that, yes, you are breaching the sovereignty of another country. So their secret way to achieve it is to ask countries to privatize. By privatizing their own sectors, meanwhile subsidizing them so they can be viable, using them through the IMF and World Bank to and loans to buy over the sovereignties of other countries, particularly African countries, in this case Nigeria, and then asking them to remove subsidies, asking them to privatize so their own companies can come and buy over all our infrastructures, asking them to devalue their currencies, our currency, so that their own organizations can come to Nigeria, spend their small dollars to buy plenty of our infrastructure. And then, of course, remove subsidies so that the prices of things can go up, so that when their own corporations come to buy over our own corporations and are now the ones in charge of our means of production, they can increase their prices and maximize their profits, which they can now repatriate back to their country with the unification of the FX window upwards in the direction of devaluation of the currency. This is the foundation of everything they are doing right now. They are not here to help us. Not at all. They are not here to help us. They are here to enslave us. And unfortunately, what they did and succeeded in time past, they are doing it again, and it appears as though they are succeeding. But you and I will not let them. The League of Patriots will not let them. Well-meaning Nigerians out there, we will not let them. We will not let them use the worst of us to keep the rest and the best of us enslaved. No more. Like King Gezo said it in that movie. No more. So can any good thing come from Tinubu's administration? The answer is no. I'll give you my reasons. You can give me yours. And we'll look at it. This battle does not have to be at a physical level. It's an intellectual fight. Because the brainwashing that has gone on is affecting our intellect. We have been hypnotized by all manner of means. It will shock you the means that the Europeans and the Americans have used to brainwash us into believing that we should be bound. And we are the ones now handing ourselves over to them for them to put us in chains. Several means. They're using politics, they are using religion, they are using education, they are using music, they are using movies, they are using sports, football, they are using entertainment, alcohol, and all that. They are using all of these things to continuously brainwash us, to continuously convince us that we should be in chains. And unfortunately, so far they have succeeded, but no more. They convince us that we need to be in chains. And because of this, many people are supporting these draconian policies of Tinubu. It's not in our interest. Before you go on to say that the fuel subsidy will benefit in the long run, I want to ask you, that was what they said with electricity when they privatized, that in the long run, electricity was going to be cheaper. Is it cheaper today? In Jonathan's time, 2012, you spent 1,000 naira to buy 64 kilowatt unit. 1,000 naira to buy 64 units. Buhari left it and it was 1,000 naira to buy 14 units. With a 40% increase in electricity tariff now, it's going to be 1,000 naira to buy 10 units. The price of electricity has kept going up since 2012 when they started this whole privatization of electricity thing. Now, do we have better electricity today? Since, in the long run, it will be cheaper. That was done with cement. Is cement cheaper today? It was done with diesel. Is diesel cheaper today? The diesel that has been deregulated, that was still in the DSDP arrangement of the NNPC. Look at that fraud. Diesel was deregulated. They claimed that they were buying and bringing in diesel. Meanwhile, it is also in the direct sale, direct purchase program of the NNPC. NNPC was just making money without questioning, with reckless abandon. With reckless abandon. Without remitting anything to Nigeria. And in connivance with the executive, because nothing can happen, whether it is the crude oil theft, whether it is the fraudulent subsidy payment, none of them can happen without the commander-in-chief of Nigeria's armed forces. So they connive and they share this money and they peg it or tag it for subsidy payment, and nobody is actually receiving subsidy. Because if you explained the DSDP program to Nigerians, you will see that there is no fuel subsidy anywhere. People were just collecting free money and impoverishing a whole nation. Of course, that was playing into the hands of what the Europeans and the Americans wanted. But no more. We will not allow the worst of us to keep the rest and the best of us in slavery. Not anymore. So the fuel subsidy removal is a fraud. There was no fuel subsidy in the first place to remove. All they wanted to do is increase the price of petrol so that when they do their privatization and those foreign companies come to use their dollars to buy our companies here in the name of foreign direct investment, and they start selling us our crude oil that they have refined at their own determined price, exorbitant price, we will not have a choice but to buy. And then they will be able to maximize their profit. That's all they did. So all of these things are just pointing in one direction. Tinubu is trying to use all of these policies to seek the favor of the Western countries, and is doing it through France. He's trying to get the favor, curry the favor of the Western countries, perhaps seeking that they will keep him in office beyond the tribunal. Because right now it will appear as though the tribunal's independence, the independence of the judges, is something to take note of right now. It appears as though those judges...
when cover is closed. Open cover and try again.
Sorry about that. That's what he's trying to do. He's trying to curry the favor of the West, of the Europeans and the Americans, to keep him in office beyond the tribunal, because it would appear right now as though the tribunal, the judges or the judiciary are really trying to be independent, or it's appearing as though the evidence that is out there in the court is overwhelming. And usually in the face of overwhelming evidence, there's really nothing the judges can do, except they want to invite the citizens to anarchy. So once there is sufficient evidence, in fact, overwhelming evidence, there's really little, next to nothing the judges can do. They have to do the right thing. Couple with that with the fact that there was this thinly veiled threat that Tinubu gave to the judiciary in his Democracy Day speech. So of course, if I were to be a judge or a justice or a member of the judiciary, I will understand that message and know that I have to stand my ground and maintain my independence. So all of these handwritings on the wall, it appears as though they are becoming clear to Tinubu and his people. And because of that, they are now seeking to use the international approach, do everything that the international community have been asking for from them, even though those things are harmful to Nigerians, do those things, and then those people can keep them in power. That's how they have always done. Of course, that's how those international organizations, that's how they operate. The CIA, the State Department, the IMF, the World Bank, the multinational corporations, what they do is they know how to destabilize governments of countries that are not dancing to their tunes. Would you believe me if I told you that there was the hand of these multinational organizations in the NSAS, and it was in sending a message to Buhari to stop him from going eastward, because they were almost selling Nigeria to China. It was to say, oh, we the Westerners, we also need some part, so behave. So while we were protesting and asking for an end to police brutality, there were so many other things that were happening. You had some of the agitators seizing the opportunity to pursue their own selfish interests. You had these IMF and World Bank and other organizations that seemingly were interested in using that same NSAS protest to drive home their message to Buhari then. So this is what they do. They know how to destabilize a government and cause regime change. So it's either the government comes out and is sincere with its people, or the government dances to their tune. And in this case, in my opinion, it will appear that Tinubu chose to dance to the tune of our slavers, because devaluation of naira is not in our interest. It's in the interest of the IMF and the World Bank and their multinational corporations and those within America that are seeking to erase and dissolve sovereignties of countries so that they can institute their own world government, like the World Economic Forum is doing right now. That's what it's favoring. The privatization is the same thing. After you have devalued, they send their own corporations to come to your country in the name of foreign direct investment. They use their dollars to buy off your corporations at very cheap rates. And then, of course, removal of fuel subsidy. When there's no subsidy, of course, it means that when they have used their multinational corporations to buy over your companies here, then they will sell at exorbitant prices because there's no control. So they force you to remove fuel subsidies. Meanwhile, I'm not the one saying it now. This is Nicholas of the International Institute of Social Studies saying it, that the biggest subsidy countries are the Americans and the Europeans. Meanwhile, they are the ones coming to tell us that we should remove fuel subsidies so that they can use their multinational corporations to buy our corporations over in the name of foreign direct investment and then sell to us as exorbitant prices in the name of subsidy removal. Can you see the handwriting on the wall? And yet somebody comes to tell us that, oh, fuel subsidy removal will eventually in the long run, the price will come down. Nothing will come down. If you are hoping that something will come down, you are joking. And mark my words today, unless we stand up against these draconian policies of Tinubu intellectually and smartly, strategically, this is not about carrying and shouting, no, it's to think smart and act smartly. Unless we do that, slavery 3.0 new, slavery 3.0, but we will overcome by the grace of God. Fuel subsidy removal is a scam. There was no fuel subsidy in the first place, and there was no need to increase the price of petrol. No reason at all. I talked about why the fact that the price of petrol in Nigeria is cheaper than that of our neighbor is no excuse, because Nigeria's petrol is not the cheapest in Africa. Algeria sells fuel cheaper, Libya, Egypt, Angola, they all sell fuel cheaper than Nigeria. And none of those countries have their petrol being smuggled into Nigeria. None. So why would they smuggle our petrol that is more expensive to those countries? Or why wouldn't they smuggle the petrol of Libya, Algeria, Egypt, Angola to Ghana that is cheaper than our own? Why wouldn't they do that? That's to tell you that even this smuggling thing is a lie. the NMPC somehow connived with the, or hiding behind the oil marketers, inflate the figures to say that the remainder of the daily consumption of petrol in Nigeria was actually smuggled out, so they can increase their fuel subsidy payment requests. That's all. No smuggling anywhere. Because we bought the software to smuggle, to monitor tankers. 50 billion naira under Buhari. So, fuel subsidy removal is the first reason that I tell you that nothing good can come from Tinubu, because it is laying a foundation that revalidates the colonialist structure of oppression. That is it. No long run good can come from that unless it is changed, the prices reversed, and then you look at where it should look. You see, on this fuel subsidy thing, Tinubu is not even bothering to look at the right thing. That's why I say that no good can come out from this administration. Nobody is talking about the $20 billion that has been spent on turnaround maintenance of our refinery. Where did that money go? Nobody's talking about it. Who were those that were paid? What companies were engaged? Nobody's asking that question. Okay, why are our refineries not working? They say, oh, government is not in the business of business. What a lie. No serious country in the world has their refinery that is not government owned. No serious country. The only countries that pretend to do something like that is the Americans and Europeans. And you know what? They use it. It's an indirect trick, like I've explained before, to get those multinational corporations to go over to other countries that are not smart enough to use those multinational corporations to buy over those countries and extend their reach indirectly to those countries. And it's only in Europe and America to see that. And guess what? Do you know that the government subsidizes these companies? Government subsidizes them to use them to come to Nigeria, Africa, and buy over our means of production in the name of foreign direct investment. Ask us to remove fuel subsidy or remove subsidy so they can sell at higher rates, keeping our people poor and getting our resources across to them. That's all. That's all they are interested in. No serious country. Russia has state-owned refineries. Saudi Arabia has state-owned refineries. Egypt has state-owned refineries. Egypt has state-owned refineries. What are you now saying? India, Afghanistan, they all have state-owned refineries. Pakistan, China, would you believe it, that China is also an oil-producing country? And they have state-owned refineries. So, waiting, how won't it be? What exactly is it that will now make us to now give up our own state-owned refineries to sell us to these Western countries in the name of foreign direct investment? Which investment? If they really wanted to help Nigeria and help Africa, Nicholas of the International Institute of Social Studies has said it all. And what did he say? What Africa needs is aggressive industrialization. Aggressive industrialization. Aggressive industrialization. And John Perkins, the writer of the book, An Economic Hitman, who used to work for IMF organization, came out and said that all the loans that they pretend they give us, the loans never actually leaves their countries, that the loan goes to paying the corporations in those Western countries who then come to buy over our structures and, riding on subsidy removal, sells those services to us at exorbitant prices, making our life easier. So at the end of the day, it is their corporations and their countries that benefit. We don't. If they really wanted to help us, what they would do, or what they need to do, is to help Africa to rapidly and aggressively industrialize. And how do they do that? Starting point is steel. Do you know Americans subsidize steel? Europeans subsidize steel companies. They subsidize them because that's the starting point. And they monitor them. On top of that, you put ICT or technology. Then when you put those two together, every other thing is dependent on steel. 90% of the materials you need to build a refinery comes from steel. 70% of the materials you need to succeed in mechanized agriculture comes from steel. 40% of the materials you need for construction of infrastructure comes from steel. That's houses now. 90% of the infrastructure you need for the generation, transmission, and distribution of electricity comes from steel. 70% of the materials you need to fight insecurity, the cars, the guns, the weapons, they come from steel. Your healthcare comes from steel. So you see, steel is the starting point. If we can get our steel sector working, we will be self-sufficient and self-reliant. And these Western powers know it. That is why they make us, they made sure, and I'm not the one saying it now, they made sure that our steel industry is destroyed. Our manufacturing ability is destroyed. Any hope of us manufacturing and developing and industrializing is destroyed, so that they can come through the back door and own us. If they really wanted to help us, that's what they need to do. Why give us $7.5 billion loan to build only train stations, 3 train lines? Only 3. $7.5 billion. When all we need to activate Ajaokuta and Alaja in Warri is $1 billion. And from what we understand, that payment has been made. So what stops us from activating Alaja, activating Ajaokuta, producing all the steel that we need to develop all these sectors: agriculture, electricity, manufacturing, housing construction? Why can't we do that? Electricity distribution, security. Why can't we do that? Rather than Tinubu looking in that direction and looking to expose the fraud in the subsidy regime, he's closing his eye to all of those and is serving Nigeria up on a platter of gold to the Europeans, the IMF and the World Bank, in the name of fuel subsidy removal. It's a long talk, but let's just leave that one there. This is the number one reason why I said that. No good can come from this Tinubu administration. No good. The second reason, we look at the students' loan. You see, aside from Tinubu being a consumption leader, Tinubu is a consumption leader. If you don't know now. Aside from Tinubu being a consumption leader, he has also mastered the art and science of divide and conquer, like his European friends and American friends. And so how does he implement this divide and conquer? There are 200 million Nigerians. So you divide those 200 million Nigerians into 2 groups. One group of very few, maybe 1 million Nigerians that are elite, and use those 1 million Nigerians against the other group, 190 million Nigerians that are extremely poor. So he divides Nigeria into 2 groups, one of 1 million or less than, the other of 190 million or more. So this 1 million, he uses them to oppress the 190 million. That was what he did in Lagos. By empowering thugs, empowering a few persons who he now used to collect his tax, he personified rent seeking to the maximum. He's not a wealth creator. He's a rent collector. He's a rent seeker. That's the problem with Tinubu's style of leadership. It's a divide and conquer approach that he uses to achieve his rent-seeking ideologies. Divide them into 2. All right, before I go on to the next segment, which is the student loan, let me play you this video. I'll play you this video and then we'll take it up from there. Where is this video? Economic Hitman? No. Good. Very strong views about how the IMF, the World Bank, and the World Trade Organization, WTO, uses economic structures like subsidy removal, currency devaluation, and privatization in developing countries to keep them poor and dependent on the West. Now, these views are pushed by an economist, a Western-trained economist with the International Institute of Social Studies in Hague, Netherlands. His name is Nicholas Howard.
Africa, historically, sub-Saharan Africa, has been fundamental to the global prosperity of the advanced countries. Okay? And Africa had a role to play. It has a role as a raw material producer. We will not allow sub-Saharan Africa to escape that. Okay, we do everything to keep sub-Saharan Africa where it is, also impoverished. It's absolutely vital for the prosperity of everyone else. So let's get clear about that. Okay, and this means all the economic structures, all the global institutions, and the economics we teach everyone is all designed to keep Africa exactly where it is. And whether it is Europe or US or now China, it's always the same. We need Africa to be impoverished because we need those raw materials and we need them dirt cheap. If Africa does do something different, I assure you, living standards of all those in Europe and North America and Asia is going to fall. Okay? And that is a big price to pay. I assure you that the West is not going to allow that without a big fight. Okay? So the job of many Western academics is to convince Africans they have to keep doing what they're doing. Okay? And to show them it's your fault that you're poor. It's not our fault. It's your fault that you're poor. We know the basic forces that have caused this underdevelopment. We know it's colonization. I will not discuss that very much because my colleague speaker is going to go into some aspects of this. No country ever develops without manufacturing. Okay, producing raw materials will not take you anywhere. Producing basic agricultural goods will not take you anywhere. And let's have a look at how much manufacturing activity takes place in sub-Saharan Africa. We can look over the last 15 odd years, 15, 20 years. And we see manufacturing has actually declined. We will never, as Western economists, as Western policymakers, we cannot afford to allow Africa to industrialize and start producing manufactures. Okay, so we will do everything to stop that. And you can see now with the weakness in the global economy, it's the emerging markets, that's the red line. It's those countries that are suffering the most, the emerging markets producing raw materials. They're suffering the most. And here, it translates into their currencies being butchered. Okay? The currencies are collapsing of these countries, and many of them are sub-Saharan African countries. Some of them are Latin American countries, okay, who also rode that same wave. They thought that raw material production was going to save them. But now they're facing terrible problems. And I'm sorry to say, it's just going to get worse in the next 2 years. It's not going to get any better. Relative to the rest of the world, sub-Saharan Africa is going to suffer. Again, why? Because it's condemned to this raw material production. This is basically why. How is it condemned to that? Well, the first and most important is the economic structures. After colonization ended, we needed new structures to keep these countries where they were. Okay? And the first of those is aid. Okay, we give them aid. Aid for what? Actually, we give them aid to keep repressive regimes in power. That's all. Okay, we're not giving them aid for much more except a little bit of infrastructure to make sure that those raw materials get to the ports and are gotten out of the ground. But for the most part, we give repressive regimes money and power and guns to keep that system going. This is what it's fundamentally about. All the
They give repressive regimes money and guns to keep them in power. Now, I don't want this video to get too long, so I'm going to stop it here. I'll do a second part where we'll look at the fuel subsidy removal. We'll look at because we have looked at the fuel subsidy removal now. We're looking at, can any good come from Tinubu's administration? And I have just scratched the surface of this fuel subsidy removal thing to prove to you that no good can come. What is in the best interest of Nigeria is to make sure that we focus on the judiciary. We help Labour Party and Peter Obi to prove their case beyond reasonable point. Practical terms now, not sentimentality. No, because that's our hope. We need people, leaders that are production leaders, not consumption leaders, not leaders that know how to divide and conquer. They use the very few worst of us to keep the rest and the best of us enslaved, stealing our resources, serving foreign interests rather than serving our own national interests. These are the things that we need to look at. And in order to prove to you further that no good can come from this Tinubu administration, no, none. All those of you hoping and thinking that in the long run that somehow things will become better, they can only get worse. And I'm not the only person that said it. In the video I just played for you now, Nicholas said it. Things can only get worse because if the foundation be destroyed, what can anybody do? If you are starting off on a wrong foundation, no matter what you build on it, it will collapse. That's why I'm saying that unless Tinubu makes a U-turn right now and reverses the increase in the pump price of fuel, right, and focuses on exposing the fuel subsidy fraud, the fraud that is there, the subsidy that was claimed to have been paid that was never received, according to what we have seen now between Buhari's statement way back and the group CEO of NNPCL also way back. From what we have seen there, no fuel subsidy. From the exposition that we have made on the DSDP program of the NNPCL, no subsidy. But rather than expose that, he's done another thing. If he wants to change course, to give us hope indeed, then he has to, first of all, reverse the increase in the pump price of petrol, and then come and expose the scam or the fraud in the subsidy, recover Nigeria's money. Of course, that will give him the money he needs to engage in developmental projects. Not forgetting the fact that he needs to shine light into the activities of these turnaround maintenance that has never turned around anything in terms of our refining of petrol. And this notion of government is not in the business of business is very, very wrong. It is a statement, it's part of the rubbish that these Western countries are teaching our so-called elites. People you expect that will understand better come out and start saying rubbish because of the things they have been taught, the garbage. And I'm not the one saying it. Nicholas said it. He's a professor at the International Institute of Social Studies in Hague, Netherlands. So it's not me saying it, that most of our elites have been taught garbage, rubbish, to make us believe that we are supposed to be in chains, to tell us that we are the ones responsible for our problems. Meanwhile, they are using the worst of us to keep us in chains, to take our resources for themselves while keeping us impoverished. He said it, that they need us impoverished. The Europeans and the Americans need us impoverished. They need us in chains so they can continue to have access to our resources. And even when they come in to buy over our corporations, they use it to impoverish us by forcing us to remove subsidies. Meanwhile, they are the biggest countries when it comes to subsidies. So if we can change and make a U-turn, turn things around and expose the fraud there, perhaps we can now say, oh, there's hope that things will be better. But as it is now, pursuing this, pursuing the other policies, which we'll look on in a separate video, we'll look at the student loan, we'll look at the electricity bill, we'll look at the 40% tariff, we'll look at the devaluation of the naira, we'll look at, those are basically it. By the time we're done with those, I'm sure that if there's any doubt in your mind that no good can come out from Tinubu's administration, I'm sure I would have been able to convince you. And the more we are convinced, it's not just to convince you now, because the purpose is not just to convince you. The purpose is to actually get you to take action. And what is the action that we require of you? We all need to work together. This whole idea that one Messiah is going to come from somewhere and save Nigeria, that's not true. We're not supporting Peter Obi because we believe that he can single-handedly change Nigeria. No. The reason why somebody like me is supporting him is because I believe that with him in power, because of his policy of listening to people, we can now bring out our ideas so that he can use our ideas. Because like you hear him, he always likes to listen. And that's why I'm supporting him. But that's not what we're getting from Tinubu right now. Now, I'm not saying these things because I did not vote for Tinubu. I'm not saying it because I support Peter Obi. No. I'm saying it because I am looking at Nigeria and I'm looking at our sovereignty and I'm seeing what these international organizations are doing behind the scenes to take over our country from our own, dissolving our sovereignty. And if they were even going to do that and help Nigerians to enjoy like they are enjoying in their own countries, it would have been good. But no, they want to do it, dissolve our sovereignty, using their multinational corporations hand in hand with the IMF and World Bank to buy us over and also to keep us enslaved so they can continue to have access to our resources. All their F-35s, their F-16s, their warships, aircraft carriers, all of them, the resources are coming from Africa. And they want to make sure that those things continue to come. All the uranium they need for their nuclear bombs, they want to keep getting it from us. We have uranium in Zamfara, in northwest Nigeria. The gold that are there, they are stealing them. Everywhere there's resources, they put one form of crisis there so that they can hide behind coming to help us fix crisis and be stealing our resources. Don't want this video to get more than 1 hour, but we need you to take action. And the action is to join the League of Patriots and contribute. We need your support to take this message to the streets. So whatever you can contribute, please do contribute. Our account number is in the descriptions. We need the support and we need volunteers. No single person can fix Nigeria. We all have to work together. And the more we realize the power we carry, the better for us. It's like the buffalo and the lion. You see a pride of lion, about 10 lions pursuing a herd of maybe 1,000 buffaloes. Yes. And usually one buffalo can even kill the lions. But because the buffaloes do not apply their own survival instincts, the lions usually have their way. But when the buffaloes come to their realization, what you see happen is that the buffaloes now come together and they put the lion to flight. This is what we can do. That's what they have been using on us. They terrorize us and make us afraid. But we need to now kick and take fear out from our midst. And we need to come together. It is not a fight of us versus them. No, it is a fight of Nigerians versus the invaders, the slavers. All of us coming together. So volunteers are welcome. Your donations, they are very, very important. Please do support us. We need to take action. We need to take action. In the next video, we'll be looking at the other aspects of why no good can come from Tinubu's administration. No good. Let's not deceive ourselves. If you're hiding behind, oh, you're close to those in power, how many of you that are close to Tinubu's government will benefit? Those who will benefit, and they are very few. Less than 1 million, like I said. The remaining 190 million will suffer. Is that what you want? I'm sure it is not. That's why we need to work hand in hand and solve this. Unfortunately, we cannot rely on certain few individuals. It's a risk because those individuals can be bought over. Look at what is happening with NLC and Labour. The fire with which NLC came out in the first place, we're not seeing it again. It's not about strike. It's about asking the right question. NLC is in a very, very vantage position to ask questions about our refineries and use the Freedom of Information Bill to get information about our refineries, about the DSDP arrangement of the NNPC. They're not doing that. They're not even asking of this. They're not even talking about it anymore. They're not talking about subsidy. How many workers do we have in Nigeria? We have 66 million Nigerians that are unemployed. Unemployment rate of almost 40%. So if you are fighting for workers that are less than how many million? What about those who are not working? So these are the things that we need to think about. All of us need to come together and solve this problem. and we shall have victory in the end. Till I come your way in the next video, please like and share this video. Let the message go round. It is possible, this new Nigeria that we seek.